Before Israel could cross the Jordan, a conflict erupted that did not occur on earth, but in the invisible world. There was a battle in heaven, a dispute that most people overlook. The archangel Michael and Satan contended over the body of Moses. It was not about his soul, but his corpse, as if even his remains carried a spiritual weight that went beyond the human. When that struggle ended, God hid the body with such perfection that, after more than 3,400 years, no one has found it. There is no tomb, no monument, no relic, only absence. As if God had closed the era of Moses without allowing anyone to turn it into a cult. But what was truly decisive was not just the mystery of the hidden body. It was what happened immediately afterward. Within days, God did 7 things in succession, one after another, with a speed that Israel had not seen in 40 years of desert. 7 actions that would have been impossible while Moses was still alive. And the last one was so forceful that it changed the way Joshua understood the conquest. A warrior appeared before him with a drawn sword, and his message was not simple encouragement, but a total reordering of reality. This is the story of what happened at the instant Moses died. If you like deep biblical studies and want to discover what most people don't see, support this content with a like and subscribe to the channel. Here we don't stay on the surface. Now, yes, let's begin. 30 days passed while Israel mourned in the plains of Moab. 30 days of grief, of silence, of suspended routine. 2 million people remained there, exposed to the elements, vulnerable, with broken hearts. Their greatest prophet was gone. The man who had spoken with God face to face had departed. Israel was immobile, as if the future were held back by the weight of the past. On the other side of the Jordan, the Canaanite kings watched. They knew that Moses had died. They knew the nation was. They knew that mourning could be a weakness, and that the change of leadership was the most fragile moment for a people. If there was ever a perfect opportunity to attack and destroy them before they crossed, it was that one. However, no attack came. There was no ambush. There was no surprise offensive. For reasons the text does not explain, Israel remained intact, as if an invisible hand were restraining the enemies. Then the mourning ended, and God spoke. What happened next resembles nothing that Israel experienced during their years of wandering. It was not a slow transition. It was not a gradual adjustment. It was a rapid sequence, almost like a divine avalanche. 7 events unfolded with relentless precision. Each one was new. Each one was unrepeatable. Each one reshaped Israel's future and pushed them toward conquest with a force that left no room for stagnation. The first event was this. God spoke directly to Joshua, not through a prophet, not through a priest, not with intermediaries. Suddenly God spoke to a man who, until that moment, had lived as second in command. The first words were cold, cutting, definitive. "Moses, my servant, is dead." 4 words, no speech, no tribute, no emotional caress. Just a fact, and then an immediate command. "Now, therefore, arise." This is what succession looks like when God is in charge. There is no transition team. There is no handover meeting. There is no grace period. A leader is buried, and the next one receives instructions before the dust settles. For the first time in 40 years, God was commissioning a new leader. One man had been God's main voice for 4 decades. And suddenly, in an instant, another was chosen. That had never happened like this in Israel. And here is the detail that many overlook. 3 times in that passage, God tells Joshua to be strong and courageous. 3 times in 9 verses we repeat it, because Joshua was terrified. He was not a novice in war, but he was in the spiritual weight of leading an entire people. For 40 years, he was under Moses' shadow. He was the assistant, the second, the one who obeyed and executed. He saw Moses open the sea. He saw his face shine when coming down from the mountain. He saw water come from a rock, and now Moses was dead. 2 million people looked at him, expecting him to do what only Moses had done. God did not repeat "be strong" because Joshua was full of confidence. He repeated it because he was not 3 times the most powerful being in the universe, repeating himself That tells you how much fear there was in Joshua. And then came the promise that changed everything. No one will be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. The same presence, the same power, the same God. Different man. Identical mission. The second event happened immediately. Joshua announced a 3-day countdown. The next morning, officers went through the camp. Imagine the size. Hundreds of thousands of tents. Millions of people, children, elderly, flocks, provisions, and everyone heard an identical message. Prepare yourselves. In 3 days, we will cross. 3 days, 72 hours. After 40 years of wandering, the wait was ending in less than a week. No nation in history has moved so quickly after losing its founder. What Joshua did was, humanly speaking, logistical madness. Crossing a flooded river with an entire people in 3 days would be unthinkable, even with modern technology. But Joshua announced it without hesitation. And here is a profound reason. Joshua was not operating with logistics. He was operating with promise. God had said, "Arise and cross." Joshua responded, "We will cross in 3 days." The countdown created what fear never produces: momentum. When the clock starts, the mind stops negotiating. This is how God often acts. He does not wait for us to be ready. He sets a deadline that forces us to move. And those who obey, even if they do not understand, end up on the other side of the impossible. The third event was this. The spies entered Jericho and met Rahab. Before the crossing, Joshua sent 2 men into enemy territory. Only 2. No army. No support. They entered Jericho and, of all possible doors, ended up at the most unexpected. The house of a prostitute named Rahab. They ended up hidden under flax on the roof, while the king's soldiers searched the area. And then Rahab spoke, and what she said changed the entire landscape. "I know that the Lord has given you this land," she said. A Canaanite woman, raised in another culture, worshipper of other gods, without access to the law of Moses. And yet, her conviction was firm. "We have heard how the Lord dried up the Red Sea when you came out of Egypt, and when we heard it, our hearts melted." 40 years had passed since the Red Sea, and yet the terror remained alive in Canaan. That was the intelligence the spies brought back. Not maps, not measurements of walls, something much more valuable. The enemy already knew they had lost. Rahab requested an alliance. A sign. A scarlet cord in the window. When judgment came, whoever was inside would be protected. A red mark on a house. Protection during judgment. The Passover was repeating, this time for a Canaanite who chose to believe. The fourth event. The Jordan opened. Israel arrived at the river during flood season. The Jordan was overflowing, out of its normal channel, roaring, dragging everything. It was not a stream crossed with calm. It was a deadly barrier that had claimed lives for generations. 2 million people stopped before water they could not cross. Behind was the desert, ahead. The promise, between both, the impossible. Then Joshua gave the most disturbing order. The priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant should go first. The most sacred thing in Israel had to advance into the water. No bridge, no boats, no plan B. Just steps and faith. The priests walked toward the edge. 2 million people held their breath, and at the exact instant their feet touched the water, the flow stopped. It was not gradual. The text says the waters piled up far away, in a place called Adam, about 30 kilometers upstream. An enormous expanse dried up, longer than a marathon. An entire nation crossed on a road opened in the heart of nature. If God had wanted comfort, he would have chosen another season. But he chose the flood, because the objective was not ease, but impact. It was terror. It was a sign. When the kings heard that God dried up the Jordan, their hearts melted and no spirit remained in them. The fifth event was the raising of the memorial stones. Once the crossing was complete, 2 million people were for the first time in history west of the Jordan. But God did not let the moment dissolve into oblivion. He commanded 12 men to return to the dry riverbed and each take a stone, 12 stones. Not decorative. evidence, physical proof that the impossible occurred. God knew that a generation later, people would doubt, so God built a permanent exhibition, like a silent testimony for the children. But here is the detail many ignore. Joshua raised another 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, under the water, hidden. Why order a monument that no one would see? 2 memorials. One visible for the people, and another hidden beneath the surface. The message is strong. There are things that leave a mark, even though no one observes them. Even in secret heaven records, even if no one applauds, the river remembers. The 6th event was the end of the manna after 40 years. The manna ceased the day after eating from the fruit of the land. 40 years of daily miracle ended in an instant. For 4 decades, every morning, the ground was covered, white, sweet, sufficient for all. And one day, nothing, just earth, silence, emptiness. Israel was fed like a child in the desert, sustained by direct provision. But you cannot conquer a land with a dependency mentality. You cannot wage war expecting everything to fall from heaven. The end of the manna was not cruelty. It was graduation. God was saying, you are no longer children. This land is your responsibility. Cultivate it. Miracles make poor soldiers if they create passivity. The desert miracle ended because the conquest demanded another type of maturity. Not just receiving, but collaborating. The 7th event was the appearance of the commander of the Lord's army. Joshua was alone. The camp remained behind. The walls of Jericho were ahead. And then he looked up and saw a man before him with a drawn sword, ready to fight. Joshua reacted like any commander. He challenged him. Are you for us or for our enemies? A binary question, direct. The answer was not what Joshua expected. No, neither with you nor against you. I am the commander of the Lord's army. Now I have come. In a single sentence, everything Joshua believed about the conquest was reconfigured. He supposed that Israel led the war and God was their ally. Was wrong. Heaven had its own army, its own commander, its own campaign. This war had begun before Israel touched the Jordan, and Joshua was not the supreme general. He was a man entering a battle already in progress. Joshua fell face down and worshipped, and the commander did not stop him. In other parts of Scripture, angels reject worship. Here, no. And not only that, he ordered him to remove his sandals because the ground was holy. The same words that were said to Moses at the burning bush. That is why many understand that this was not a common angel, but a visible manifestation of God himself. The message was clear. You are not alone. You never were. And this war was never yours to lose. Joshua asked, which side are you on? And received a deeper truth. It is not about God joining our side. It is about us joining his. When you look at the 7 events together, a structure appears. The first 3 establish authority. God commissions Joshua. Joshua gives orders to the people, and Rahab confirms, the land is ready. The next 2 demonstrate power. The Jordan parting, and the memorial stones. The last 2 mark transition. The manna ends, and the commander appears. Nothing was random. Everything was orchestrated, and here is the paradox. The man who opened the Red Sea could not cross the Jordan. The man who received the law did not apply it in Canaan. Moses was indispensable, until his permanence became a limitation. There were things that could only begin when he ended. Everything that happened afterward could not happen while Moses lived. He could not guide the people to the land. He was forbidden. He could not eat from the fruit of Canaan. He would never touch that ground. His death did not interrupt the plan. It was part of the plan. Many Christian interpreters have seen an even greater pattern. The law can take you to the edge, can show you the way, but cannot introduce you into rest. For that, Joshua was needed. And the name Joshua in Hebrew is the same name that Jesus would later receive. Whether the author saw it this way from the beginning, or readers discovered it later, the parallel marked centuries of interpretation. What the law could not complete, one with that name would complete. And the speed of the events is not exaggeration. They occurred in days. There was no slow transition. It was like receiving the keys to a company the day after the founder dies. No training, no manual. with immediate responsibility. God did not wait for Israel to feel ready. He did not wait for Joshua to find confidence. He moved, and the people had to follow him. Those who stayed waiting lost the moment. Those who walked with God, even trembling, became part of something greater. Moses died. Joshua rose. The Jordan opened. Jericho fell. And yet Israel learned a lesson they would forget in a generation. Conquering is not possessing. The land was never theirs to hold as owners. It was theirs to administer as servants. The pattern repeats. Leaders die, promises remain, and God's plan always advances faster than mourning allows. We began with a dispute over a corpse. Michael and Satan fighting over the body of the man who spoke with God face to face. That body disappeared. But what Moses built did not disappear with him. Remember how Moses died. He climbed the last mountain with firm eyes and intact strength. They did not drag him. He walked. He saw everything he would not touch, and he did not negotiate. He did not plead. He died as someone who understood his role had ended. Some are called to begin what others will finish. Some will see the vision but will not live within it. And that is not failure. It is faithfulness. Moses prepared the way for those who would cross. Now, I ask you, what Jordan do you have before you? What promise feels impossible because the river is flooded? Joshua was also afraid. God told him 3 times, "Be strong." If you are afraid, you are in good company. Fear does not disqualify you. Obedience in the midst of fear is what God honors, and this is the part that hurts. The water does not open until your feet get wet. It does not part from the shore. It parts when you advance. So whatever your Jordan is, enter, take a step. And tell me in the comments what part of this message hits you hardest. If this showed you something in Scripture you had not seen before, subscribe and activate notifications. Share this video with someone who is facing their own Jordan. Perhaps they need to hear it today. In the next episode, the conquest of Jericho begins, and I will tell you something in advance. The walls did not just fall. They fell inward, and that detail changes everything you were taught.